Hi, everybody. So wonderful to see you all today. Well, you can see us. I can't see you, but I know you're there. And my name is Andrea. I am the president and co founder of the Stigma-Free Mental Health Society. This is our Stigma-Free Voices podcast, and super excited for you to be watching. And super excited to have Paul Bromby with us. You want to say a quick hello, Paul?
Hello, everyone. I'm honored and excited to be on here today as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us. We have an amazing segment ahead. I'm going to be asking you a bunch of questions, digging into your new book, learning a little bit about you. And I thought a good place to start would be to share your bio. Sound good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm Paul Bromby. I grew up in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And I guess the reason I'm on here today is that I wrote a children's book called The Backpack, which kind of discusses growing up with a parent with mental health issues. So my mom lived with bipolar disorder, which growing up was, it was a real troublesome for me, and I kind of acted out a bit as a kid, and then found sports and found basketball. And I would say, and I've said in the past, it probably saved my life and kept me out of trouble. The players on the team became my brothers, and the coach became the father figure that I definitely needed. And just a place to that the basketball court was a place that I felt safe. So I played most of my life growing up from about age 13 onwards, and played for Team Nova Scotia, played at St. Mary's and Mount St. Vincent University, where our teams had a lot of success. My first year, we lost the national championship to Brock. My last year, we won a national championship where I was captain against the University of Alberta. And that kind of set the trail for my career. I moved to Toronto in early 2000 and started working at Sportsnet, and just recently finished a 25-year career in sports production, television media, did everything. And my last produced hockey, produced a lot of Leafs, Oilers, Canucks, Flames games. And then when about 10 years ago, when we kind of amalgamated with CBC and get the national rights, did some Hockey Night in Canada, a lot of the playoff games, pre-games, intermissions. And then the last 6 or 7 years, I was working as a senior producer, more executive role, with Sportsnet Central, where had started my career, and Tim and Sid, which was a lot of fun, a lot of creativity. And but the nights and the weekends, and having an 11-year-old son got to me. So and now I'm just really pushing forward, and trying to promote the backpack, and try to help and change some lives along the way.
Amazing. Empowering generations to come, right? I really love
Yes.
that. Yes,
Mhm.
definitely. And just briefly, I'd like to get into the sports aspect and how's it shaped your life, especially basketball?
It's a great question. I think it gave me discipline, and goal setting, hard work, being on time, just so many, how to work with other people, how to set goals, and and achieve those goals in a team concept. And I think everything I took within sports, I've kind of brought to my career. I also now coach my son's U11 team. They've done very well. They finished third in the province in the last couple of years. And I try to teach those same principles, hard work, just doing the right things, being a good teammate. And I think it just gives you the discipline and the goal setting, that really sets you up for life. If I hired when I was in my last position, I did a lot of hiring. And if I saw somebody had a team background or a sports background, that obviously stood out for me, that they, could multitask, that they could be a good team player and when things get stressful, usually had good conflict resolution. So I think sports taught me all of those things, to be honest. And I was just very lucky to always play on good teams with great teammates.
Yeah, and when you talk about being a good teammate, that really speaks to being a good person.
Well, we all have our moments, but I think
Yeah.
I think I've grown a lot. I think with what I was dealing with when I was younger, there was a abusive alcoholic father figure in the household. My mom was living with bipolar disorder, so there was a lot of chaos in the home. And for me, I acted out in ways, just being a kid, really growing up, making a lot of mistakes. But I think when I started playing team sports that I didn't want to make those mistakes because I didn't want to let my teammates down. I didn't want to
Mhm.
get kicked off the team for being a dummy. And so I started changing and curving those behaviors and trying to be a better teammate. And, I see the same thing in a lot of kids that I coach. I see them acting out. I see them looking for attention in the wrong ways. And I try to correct that and just, point out. And I know there's something behind. It's not the actions, it's that they're looking for attention.
Mhm.
So I kind of was very similar, now as an adult, I like to say I try to be the person that I needed when I was a kid. So as a father figure, as a coach, as a mentor, I try to be that person that I needed, that little Paul needed, the younger
Yeah.
version of me.
Yeah, 100%. I can so identify with your story in having a parent who has mental illness. My mom as well was diagnosed as bipolar disorder when I was growing up. And I think that actually happened when I was like 3 years old. So it was like all my life I experienced this. And when I read your book, thank you for sending me a copy, really teared up. And I messaged you right away. And I just have to say, it was such a reflection of a lot that I experienced and that stigma that I felt against my mom, but knowing there's a great love there as well, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's exactly why I wrote the book. I said, before we came on here, I said I wrote the book for you, and you do what you do for me. It's because we needed to know that we weren't alone out there. And I think when I was going through it, especially you said, 3, 4, 5, when you start to understand that your mom's different than other moms, and you start to be resentful, and you start to have anger towards her, but really
Mhm.
your hurt and resentment is towards the illness. And I think for me, I just want people to understand that, that we're humans, that we're souls, that we're source light energy, and we're not those stigma and those diseases that are attached to us. It's just something that we're going through. And with my mom, I used to lash out as a teenager, and I think when she passed, I just didn't want another kid to treat their mom the way that I did because of the anger and the hurt that I had towards the illness. And I think anybody that has a relative or a friend that's going through any kind of mental illness, it's the people that are the support group and the people that are supporting them and standing by that often just as difficult because you're in a space that you just can't help them, and it
Yeah.
becomes frustrated. And so I really just wanted to write the book that to be, again, be there to let people know that they're not alone going through this. And honestly, I got through it, and you'll get through it as well, and the people going through the illnesses will also get through it.
Yeah. And so tell me a little bit more about the inspiration in writing the children's book.
When my mom passed away in 2008, ironically, I don't think I would have been able to write the book if she was still alive because I still had a lot of the anger and hurt and resentment. But when she passed, I wanted to do something that to honor her and to show people that, yes, she might have struggled, but she battled and she got up every single day and she did her best and she got a bit of a brat kid through university, really. She supported me and kept a roof over my head and did whatever she could to help get me through. And I just wanted to honor her in a way that I don't think I honored her when she was alive. And I think this book, there's a letter, a dedication to her. I think when we were writing it, I was writing it from a victim point, like, oh, poor Paul. And I think during the process, I kind of learned that I was very lucky to go through the process that I went through with my mom because it created a resilience in me that I don't know if I would have had. It created an empathy within me that I don't think I would have developed or had. And of course, I'm over 50 now. Try to explain that to a 10 or 9-year-old that just wants his mom to take him swimming, and we don't have a car, and she's not responsible enough to do those things. And so,
Mm.
I think the I thought about a documentary. I thought about something to try to end the stigma, try to normalize mental health more than it is already. I know my own embarrassment and shame. I look back and if your mom had cancer, if your mom had a broken arm or broken leg, you
Mhm.
wouldn't be embarrassed. You would be very empathetic, and you would want other people to have that sort of empathy towards them. But I think growing up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, there just wasn't the understanding of mental illness. I still don't think there is quite the understanding of mental illness. I think we're working towards it. But yeah, I just wanted to do something to honor her and help others.
Yeah, beautiful. So, as a first time author, tell me about the process in writing this children's book. I know you touched on that briefly, but what was it like? Because I want to write my own book too. And I would love to know how that was like for you.
Well, when you think about writing a children's book, I think the first part, my first crack at it was like I was doing nursery rhymes and trying to rhyme it. And it was just it was amateur hour. So I got help from my son was in a program called Sport Ball, and Jason DeRocha, who was kind of running the program, and he had just written a book called My Mom, My Superhero. And I said, I have an idea for a children's book. And we met, and it was almost like the opposite spectrum of what his experience was with his mom and what mine was with my mom. And he's like, man, in hindsight, he said, I don't even know how we even got started on this because it was so foreign to me. But once we sat down and I started sharing my experiences and what I wanted to convey, it was an incredible process. I think I
Mhm.
pictured the book as like the images of the book and kind of it's called the backpack, and Paul, the backpack's a metaphor for all the burdens and the worries that Paul was carrying growing up about his mom. And so then we had to kind of figure a story around that, that process of a kid carrying a big backpack and how we're going to interject that into a basketball story. And
Mm.
it worked out. Like, it took 5 years. We had COVID. Our illustrator had some issues. His mom had passed away, so we went through a lot. But when we were finished the book, the looking back, I think everything has perfect timing, and I think I was ready to release the book. And I think the process itself is way more daunting to start, but once you start, it's actually an amazing process.
Yeah, evolving and growing, right? That's just
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, for sure. Okay, as well too, what's your goal for your book and what do you want to achieve?
That's a great question. I would love to get the book. We've created a curriculum with it. I've been into some schools, and in particular went into a school in Scarborough, Ontario, where we have a blank backpack. I share my story, read the book with them, and then they kind of write in words of feelings and emotions and color the backpack. And it's just a very incredible process, and also a great aid for teachers to understand what the children in their classes are going through. Like, some of the words that were in their backpacks were just like heartbreaking. You see a
Mm.
kid in grade 3 or 4 writing hungry, or mad, not good enough, like just so many things in there that these kids are feeling and carrying with them. And if we can identify it, then we can help build better people. So I think I would love to see it be part of a curriculum within schools. I've done a lot of research, before writing this book and since writing it. There's not a lot out there. We built a curriculum with junior storytellers to help exercises with teachers. If you look on the link of the backpack juniorstorytellers.com, you'll see the curriculum there. It's free. The exercises are incredible. And again, just want to help and try to end the stigma and try to educate.
Yeah, and you were talking about your mother having a mental illness, and I know that's really why mental health, mental illness is important for you to talk about, but why is mental health as well? Like, what else is important to you? Why is it so important?
Well, I think it's important because we all struggle. There's not one person on this planet that doesn't struggle at some point emotionally, um, kind of what you're going through in a day to day. And I think the more we normalize it and the more we talk about it, the more we can help each other. I think there's so much focus on physical health, and I think mental health is even more important than physical health, because if you're not in the right state of mind, you can go to the gym every day, and you can run every day, you can eat well, but you're still not going to feel good inside. And I think if we start inside and feel good inside, then we're going to see a much happier, better place, to be quite honest. And I think to do a children's book, we're starting at the grassroots, and we're going to raise better people by introducing these concepts and things to younger kids and not being afraid of talking about it, but breaking down that stigma.
Yeah, that's what we do at Stigma-Free Mental Health. Such a good
Yes.
fit. So happy to have you here talking about this. So let's go back to your mother, and I want to talk about how it's impacted your life and especially your childhood. Can you tell me about that a bit?
Sure. I mean, I think I just didn't have your normal childhood. Like, I think a lot of kids look to for guidance and direction and trust with their parents. And I felt like I was thrust into a more of an adult parent mode when I was
Mhm.
younger. I kind of had to take care of her from age 13. I worked since I was 13. Um, so I think I had to grow up pretty quick. Um, and so there was a lot of embarrassment and shame with some of the things, some of the behaviors, some of the thing, and then just kind of coming and as you know, dealing with I guess back then it was called manic depression, but I never knew who I was coming home to. Was I coming home to the person that had, every light in the house on, the radio blaring, smoking two cigarettes at a time? And is she going to be okay? Or am I going to come home to the person in her bed crying? Or am I going to come home to my normal mom? And I say normal, and I'm not diminishing anything. I'm just saying the normal that I knew as normal.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part about talking about mental health when, you know, I'm not a professional, I'm an advocate. And so sometimes you trip on these things and you say things that could, I've learned to say lived with, bipolar disorder rather than she was
Mm.
manic depressive or she was bipolar. So
Mhm.
education, I'm still learning. And I think back then it just was so different. And it was very hard for me to not feel that hurt and pain. And the biggest thing is I just wanted her to be, I wanted to fix her. I wanted to help, and I couldn't. I was a kid. And so as an adult, if I can maybe not fix somebody, but help the family have a discussion about it and have a better understanding than I did, that really is my hope and goal.
Yeah. I know what you mean. I have bipolar disorder as well. It's in my family.
Yeah,
And what I've learned is there's a lot of gray. It's not just black and white. And you're right. And so there is the mania and the depression, and the middle part I always call my stability, right? Who I am as a balanced individual who's in that type of remission. And so I know exactly what you mean by the word normal. And I think maybe it's just when your mom was balanced and someone you could recognize and who she is at her core. Am I right?
100%. And
Yeah.
when she was taking her medication regularly
Yeah.
and when it was working properly, I think I've seen with other people, oh, I feel great, and they go off their medication and
Yeah.
then they spot, or they're just sick and tired of taking the medication all the time and
Yeah.
going to the appointments and all those things. Um, my mom was institutionalized in the last kind of 5 years of her life, and she was in a really bad place where she was still having electric shock therapy. And the night she passed away, she was scheduled to have it the next morning. And I've always thought, she was just done with it. She was done with this
Yeah.
crap. And it sounds barbaric that we're still doing these things and we haven't found something, but it worked for her. It kind of blocked out. She was sexually assaulted as when she was younger, and that was her trigger, and she could never get past that or forget about it. and
Mhm.
and this was, so electric shock therapy and different treatments, some worked for short periods of time, but after a while it just, it wore her out and she just could not get past it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story. I know perhaps it can be very sensitive, and yeah, I really appreciate it. Um, so if you could speak to the young child, little Paul, who was going through this, what would you say?
I would say that you should really appreciate your mom right now because she's not always going to be here. You should understand that it's not your mom, it's the illness that are the things that you resent. So I wouldn't have had all this guilt in my 30s and 40s. Um, and then I would just say you're going to be okay. You're going to get through it. Um, I think when you're going through things, resilience never feels good when you're being resilient. It's the
Yeah.
years later that you look back and you're like, oh man, I was pretty tough to get through those things. And honestly, I would tell her how proud of her I am in that time that she was battling every day getting up. I mean, for some people, just getting out of bed is the goal of the
Mhm.
day. And she was getting out of bed, feeding me, keeping me a roof over my head, and doing her best on social assistance to get me through to where I am today. So I think the biggest thing is you're going to be okay. And I've told other people, when I speak at seminars and different things that you know you might feel like you're messing your kid up because you have a mental illness or you're living with PTSD, but you're not. They're going to figure it out, and it's all part of your journey and their journey. And don't beat yourself up because you can't help it. And so I would basically just be more supportive and loving towards her at the moment, and tell her, we're going to be okay. We're going to get through it.
How would she feel about the book, do you think?
I think she'd be proud. I know, like I said, I want to make a part like as you read the book, it's kind of a little bit of maybe not a total happy ending, but there's hope, there's light at the end of the tunnel. I think it would probably hurt her in some of the things in the ways that I kind of started the book I had to kind of show some of the illustrations. The house was a bit messy, or she was barging into a basketball game. These things happen. I think she would have embarrassment about it, but I think she would also understand it was part of the story. And then as the story goes, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and she does her best, and we work together as a team to try to battle this thing that she was fighting.
Yeah, and I just love how you've taken something very serious topic, something that a lot of people deal with, and thread hope through that little book. And I feel that's so admirable. Okay, so I was just curious. Let's come back to you and your mental health. What kind of daily practices? What do you do for yourself?
Let's That also is a great question, because I've never, as you know, mental health, especially bipolar, runs through families. Um, as a kid, my mom would always say, there's a chance you could end up having, what I have. And she wanted me to speak to counselors or therapists. And I fought it. I fought it because I was like, I'm gonna tough this out. I'm strong. But obviously we all go through things. I think I've dipped my toe in depression a few times over the years, but I can self-regulate and get myself out of that by
Mm.
exercising. Now later in life, I meditate every day. I have a daily meditation practice where I wake up and meditate for 30 minutes. I feel like that just starts my day with, calms the waters a bit. I like to read, and when I really feel out of sorts, I just exercise, go for a run, go play golf, do something that I'm in the moment. I think, when you're worried about the past, you can't control that. And when you're worried about the future, you can't control that. So if I try to stay in the moment, that's when I feel way more centered and calm. And that's really what I try to do, as my own practice. I think if, with my job, you know, for a month ago, I was working a lot of late nights. My diet wasn't great. I think in the last little bit, I've straightened that out, and I feel, a million times better. But a lot of us, we have to work the jobs we have to work. We have to do what we have to do. And those things, bad eating habits and different things play a factor in our mental health. So I just try to focus on eating a little better, exercising. And when I hear those negative voices in my head, I just say, that's not you. And you gotta just kind of step back and understand and put yourself in the moment.
What about spirituality? Is that something you practice?
Huge. Yeah. I think for the last, man, I would say 10 years, every book I read is a spiritual book. And I think it's helped me understand that, as I said earlier, we're a light source. We're not humans having a spiritual experience. We're spirits having a human experience. And this is not something that we have to take too seriously. I really do think we're here to have fun and enjoy this beautiful planet that we're on, as hokey as that sounds. But the tests that we're given and the way that we respond is part of the journey. But I really do look at, my spirit and mindset that I've gone through these things to help others. I think it's given me a purpose. It's given me a reason when I get up and don't have a great day. It's like, you know what? Just keep pushing through. Just do your best, and that's all you can do. I've read so many books, but when my mom passed, in the Journey of the Soul by Michael Newton, um, Conversations with God, which isn't a religious book; it's a spiritual book. There's just Donna Walsh wrote that, and then that kind of took me on this trail of spiritual books, that I've enjoyed, that have, kept me balanced and keep me understanding that, you know try to just have fun while we're here.
Yeah, that is the point. I think we definitely need to enjoy our lives. And I really appreciate you sharing about the evolution, right? So I think it's important that we keep learning and that we work on ourselves to grow. And yeah, I really appreciate all of those tips. I think people will find that very useful. So I just had a last question for you. Say if there's school district staff or school principals out there, what would you like to say to them about the backpack?
I would just like to say, just give us an opportunity to come to your schools. Junior storytellers, we're starting a group of storytellers to go into schools. The Backpack is one book. There's another book, My Mom, My Superhero, Nothing But Yet, which is about growth mindset. So we're starting this series of books that are based in behavior and based in and kind of again, mine's more of a mental health, but more of a learning towards the emotional side and the mental health side of growing up as kids. But I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned and a lot of things that, tools that can help teachers start these really tough conversations in a fun way that doesn't feel like it's too serious. Like, the book has a lot of fun animations. It's a lighter story,
Yeah.
but it is a heavy topic, but it's a way to introduce it in a light way. I've speak at schools, I've speak at conferences. I like to share my story, and again, to help others.
Love it. Well, thank you, Paul. Please stay on the line after so I can thank you and say goodbye.
Sure.
But yeah, I really appreciate you coming today. I think the story around having a parent who has mental illness is so important to tell. I remember I was embarrassed for my mom to come to my graduation, and it really haunted me for decades until I talked to her about it and I told her how I felt. And she said, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, no, everything's okay, hon. I don't feel any animosity around that. And I think it's a great honor for you to do this for yourself and especially for your mother, who I know would be very proud.
That means the world to me. And it's funny you mentioned that because I've had those same things as part of the book where I was embarrassed for her to come to a game.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of videos on social media of kids seeing their parents in the stands and they light up like a Christmas tree because they're so excited that somebody showed up. But my experience was different, and I think yours probably was too. But I think in hindsight, had they showed up, and if they showed up, we would have got through that as well. But
Yeah.
I think my mom's always here with me. I know she's here. She says hi with certain songs and certain things. I know,
Mhm.
and so yeah, so I think she's proud as well. And that word means the world to me.
Yeah, and all those signs that we see along the way, I call them God winks actually, because they're
Absolutely.
so obvious. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I love that. No, that's
Yeah.
really important. I bet you a lot of people out there experience similar things. All right. Okay. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into Stigma Free Voices podcast. We had Paul Bromby here today. Thank you so much, Paul. And I also just wanted to remind people to check out studentmentalhealthtoolkit.com, where there is many resources for grades 4 to 12. And we really, really hope that you will use our toolkit in the schools. We're going to be doing some more promotional aspects with Paul on the backpack as well and dig into the book even more. And yeah, so thank you everybody for watching. If you're watching after the fact, please do share on your social media channels as we host on YouTube and Facebook Live. So everybody, have a wonderful day. Much appreciation to all of you. And let's remember to be kind to our parents who may be struggling in ways that we really didn't understand as children. And everybody deserves some grace. So thank you.